This is Brooke Lewis, and you are listening to From Page to Screen.
Right, on the call we have Anthony Alex from the Angry Mailman podcast. We have Simon, who's sort of independent, I guess, aren't you? You're trying to start up a wrestling podcast, but not quite done it yet.
Nah, not yet. I'll get there eventually.
We have Knight 3K. Do you want to give a shout out for the podcast that you do? It's probably a multitude knowing there.
Yeah, well, there's a lot that I do, but my main podcast is Truthfully Geeking. That's the one I definitely want to advertise with my co-hosts Nikki and Steve.
And then we have Andrew Whitworth, who we call Bob, and he's from the From Page to Screen livecast and the media cast. Right. Okay. So we'll see how this show goes tonight. It's basically going to be a talk about Star Wars changes and also a bit of an overview on whether you think it's okay for any filmmaker to make alterations to their film after they've completed it. So it's not so much on Lucas, but I'm sure he's going to get most of the flack.
Wait, you said Star Wars? I thought we were doing Dune.
We can do Dune. We can do Dune.
Okay.
That's also been altered as well, hasn't it? Dune, the Alan Smithy 3-hour version, which is apparently terrible. But I've never gone round to watching that one. Did you know that David Lynch was actually offered the directing job of Return of the Jedi, though?
No.
No?
I did not.
He was, along with David Cronenberg. Yeah, that'd have been a whole different film, wouldn't it?
I was going to say, which character would have been missing limbs?
I would like to see Jar Jar Binks, but unfortunately he wasn't in Jedi, but I'm sure in a future version of the movie he will be.
Yeah.
Right, so who's managed to watch the Blu-rays, or at least the deleted scenes on the Blu-ray?
I've watched about 8 discs through. I haven't watched the final disc with all the documentaries and stuff on it, but I've seen the films and all the deleted scenes.
And what's your thoughts? I mean, you're an interesting sort of subject anyway, Simon, because your age, you're 17, 18?
Yeah. I grew up with the prequels rather than the original films, so yeah. Feel sorry for me. The deleted scenes were amazing. The old trilogy ones, the original ones the prequel ones were kind of pointless because they weren't really done, but some of the original deleted scenes were quite interesting.
What was the sort of length of these scenes as well? Because I haven't watched the scenes.
I was really surprised by how long some of them were actually. Some of the ones in particular from A New Hope were long. There was a pretty long scenes that were cut from Tatooine with Luke that were just kind of they were really long. I'm not ruining it. You'll have to. If people haven't seen it.
It's one to watch.
Are these the scenes where he's hanging around with his friends?
Yeah. The Anchorhead ones.
Yeah, that was actually in the radio play of Star Wars. They had that pretty lengthy sequence in there, which is set before the actual opening of the film.
They're watching the fight in space from the beginning of the movie with the blockade runner and the Star Destroyer, and they're watching it in the distance. Yeah.
So when was the first time that you ever saw Star Wars, Simon?
When I was younger, I think it's like one of the first films I ever saw when I was about the original film, about 8, maybe 6, 8.
So that way I'm trying to do my maths. I'm suffering from a little bit of flu, so my brain's a bit ropey there. So you're talking about 9 years ago, aren't you?
I'm probably even younger than that, actually, now that I think about it.
And what about Anthony, Ralph, and Bob?
First one for me was what is now episode 4. So at the time was just Star Wars. And we're going back to probably the year that it came out.
Same here.
Fancy. I was born in 75, but I do remember going to see A New Hope at a drive-in movie theater, being really young and having the little deal that you click on your window. You hang on the window for your audio.
Yeah.
And then, I live in Alabama. We saw Return of the Jedi later we were on vacation in California and went to a movie theater in California, and I just remember just ridiculous crowds and how excited I was being a little kid to go see that.
Ralph?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story, but yeah, I was born in '75, so the original. I was way too young to go see it in the theaters, but I think the first time I saw it was when it was on TV. And actually, I'm sorry. I know the first time I saw it was when it first came to television, and it was a big deal because it was before there was surround sound and things like that, and they were actually broadcasting it on the radio at the same time they were broadcasting it on the TV. So you would tune your radio into the station that was broadcasting it and turn your TV channel to the same station, and you would get that sort of stereo surround sound effect. So, not quite movie theater, but it was the first movie that I watched in that way, and I just remember the difference. The extra bass and things that you got from just having all the sounds come through the radio. And yeah, I can't remember the date, but I had to have been 9 or 10 years old. So.
Apparently, I saw it on release when I was about 6. I was born in '71, and although I can't remember seeing it on the big screen, I've been told that I actually did go and watch it. So Bob and I would probably have been the first people to actually watch just Star Wars before it became Episode 4.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
Being the oldest one here, born in '66, I was old enough to appreciate it.
Did you go and watch Star Wars and you think, that's not as good as 2001?
2001 was a bit heavy going.
I still can't get through that film. I know it's a classic and everybody loves it. I struggle with 2001. It's just, yeah.
Total different writing style.
Oh God, yes. Although some of the special effects people from that did go on to work on Star Wars and stuff,
Well,
so there's a little bit of a connection.
It was one of the big influences, wasn't it, to making the original Star Wars 2001.
It was indeed. And I've got to say, I prefer Star Wars to 2000.
Oh yeah, miles better.
Original version, obviously.
To be honest, A New Hope isn't one of the ones that's been badly affected with all the editing, so it still really holds up.
The main culprit seems to be Jedi, doesn't it? Certainly in these Blu-ray releases.
It seems to be Jedi's the worst, I think. Even Empire, for the most part, has pretty much remained untouched. It seems to be the first one, the last one that he's been using to kind of... He's trying to bring it closer to the new 3, so...
Yeah, he should stop. He should distance them from the new 3. In fact, he should get rid of the new 3.
Well, how many years were there between the filming of what is now Episode 6 and the filming of Episode 1?
Well, the first prequel came out in '99, and Star Wars, the original one, was '77, Jedi '83. So you're talking, 16 years between the last of the trilogy and the first of the prequels.
This is it. You think of the technology that's moved on with regards to special effects in those years. Yeah.
But the problem he's got then is if he, and it's an interesting question, is if you were showing your child today the Star Wars movies, all of them, which order would you show them in? Prequel 1, 2, 3, original trilogy 4, 5, 6, or would you do 4, 5, 6 and then the prequels?
I'd do it in release order.
I would do it in chronological order.
Really?
Yeah. I'd probably do the 4, 5, 6, then 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, I've done it I did it in episode order or chronological order, as Alex said, and I find that even though the next movies, and you would think that they would see the older movies after watching the newer movies and think that the quality is lesser, but by the time they get to episode 4, they already have a relationship with the characters. They already understand the characters, and it just made it easier for them to look past the obvious technological the things that just weren't there in the originals.
Yeah,
they were flipping switches and pressing buttons. In the new ones, they have like flat panel displays where and so if I were to show them that in the beginning, they would think, oh God, it's one of Daddy's movies. But showing them the first 3, the prequels first, actually made a difference, and it just helped them identify with the story more than the picture quality or the.
I mean, my only issue on that would be if you show them in prequels and then original trilogy, you're losing the whole Is Vader telling the truth when he says he's Luke's dad, or is he trying to screw with his head? If you watch the prequels first, you kind of know.
True.
Yeah, but then do you want to be like when the prequels start? Now this is Darth Vader right here, but he's just a little boy. You know, you're having to like explain everything. I think you know, I mean, knowing the original 3 movies, you know, it's like 2 different levels. It's the same way as like some cartoons, you know, will have 2 different levels. You have one level that's just like the kids laughing, and then they'll have like another level that's like adults get it. I think it'd be the same way if you play them out of chronological order. You know, there's a lot of little things that are said in the prequels that you're like, oh, that's a reference to this, or oh, that's a reference to that. But you know, kids aren't going to get that. So playing them in chronological order, I think, would be easier for the kids to understand who the characters are, and you know, who is whose son, you know, and how everybody ties together. You know, oh, Jango Fett, oh, I see who that is. You know, instead of trying to explain, oh, that's this guy's father. You remember that guy in the other movie? There's a whole lot of explaining, I think, if you don't do them in chronological order.
I think one day I will watch them in episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just for my own sort of knowledge to see if they work as well as they should do.
Whenever I go back and watch them, I always watch them 1 to 6. Even though I said before that I'd probably watch someone to watch it that way. You know, I always go back and watch it 1 to 6 because I think you get a fuller appreciation of the story.
Yeah, and it works watching them that way.
It works to a certain extent. I mean, there's some tough goings in those first 2. I mean, I didn't really think the last prequel was that bad, but the first 2, yeah, I see some of the hatred.
I enjoyed Phantom Menace when it came out. I wasn't one of these Jar Jar Binks should die.
I really don't get, honestly, for the most part, I really don't get the amount of hatred some people get. Is it a generational thing? Because I didn't grow up with the original 3 movies, right? Some people seem to have this image that these original movies are really, really bad, like some of the worst movies ever made. And I watched them, and they're not that bad.
I think Attack of the Clones is. I can't stand Attack of the Clones.
I think to me, that film is like the story of 2 films, right? I think some of the romance stuff is absolute shit. Can I swear on this?
Of course you can, yeah.
You just did.
It's absolute shit.
It's all right, we'll do a Lucas and dub it out with a no.
All right.
It's absolute no.
Parts of it at the end, like the Clone War and stuff, which are really, really good, and it's like a cluster mess.
Yeah. What's everybody else's thoughts on just the prequels?
I agree. Well, I think Phantom Menace is horrible. I mean, Jar Jar Binks is a pointless character. There's just no need for him to be in there at all. You know, the movie would be better if they just completely took that segment out. You know, in my opinion. As far as episode 2 goes, I think it began really good and I think it ended really well. But yeah, the middle portion where they're trying to tell this romance story, they just did it all wrong. But
the biggest problem for me in that movie is Natalie Portman. She's awful in these movies.
No, I disagree.
Hayden Christensen.
Oh,
Hayden Christensen's the worst.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? Hayden Christensen wasn't so bad in the last one. I didn't think he was that bad in the third one. I understand in the second one, but Natalie Portman, I think, was bad in all 3 of them.
Oops. No, I didn't have an issue with Natalie Portman, personally.
My own personal thoughts is they killed off the best character.
Darth Maul.
No.
Qui-Gon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Liam Neeson doesn't get the credit that he deserves in that movie.
I just watched a YouTube clip earlier that says Qui-Gon Jinn is the worst Jedi ever, and it just shows all the mistakes that he made in the movie. At one point, he's like, "I don't sense anything," and there's like something ridiculously bad about to happen. I don't remember the exact circumstances, but then they also took a bunch of clips from the filming where he like dropped his lightsaber and all this stupid stuff happened. And it pretty much made him look like the idiot Barney Fife bumbling Jedi.
Yeah, that's another reason why I don't like episode 1, because I mean, as an avid Star Wars fan, I don't just watch the movies. I've read the books, most of them. And when you read the books prior to episode 1, you know, Qui-Gon Jinn is a really good Jedi. He's the
good guy.
And, yeah, he would not make those mistakes. And so they really downplayed his ability.
Yeah.
I don't even think that he would lose a match with Darth Maul. So I mean, they just really, really downplayed it. But they did the same thing with Master Windu, who was also supposed to be, unrivaled with a lightsaber, and he's taken out in, in a few minutes. Just in episode in episode 3, yeah, and it seems like he would be able to survive just a little, a wee bit longer, having gone through everything that he's gone through, in his lifetime as a Jedi.
I think of all the things that Lucas had trouble with was, it was established that, okay, at some point all the Jedi are going to have to die, but he is the worst at coming up with ways for these almost superhero type characters with all the powers they have, the skills they have, and all that. The way that he killed those off, it was all just a bunch of lame stuff. You're going to let a bunch of like stormtroopers that can't hit the broadside of a barn with a laser rifle, kill these superheroes off, essentially. I think that's where the biggest mistake was, and I've heard other people talk about this before, but there should have been a movie that focused mostly on the extinction of the Jedis, and I think that would have been way better to take a whole movie instead of just like Order 66 or whatever, and just some silliness, little clips, is a whole movie pretty much based on Darth Vader hunting down these Jedis, just full of epic battles. I think that was the biggest hole in all these movies is the potential there of the battles and all that, and not focusing on all these other little things.
I mean, the prequels to me aren't. I mean, they are what they are. I mean, I don't mind 3 so much, but I do admit there's big parts of the story that they miss out in those 3 films, and they miss big gaps, and they rushed parts that I wish they'd spent more time on.
Yeah,
definitely. Yep. Do you think he'll go back and make severe alterations to the prequels, or I know he tweaks with them now and again slightly? But do you think he'll go back?
I think he's someone, who's very. I think he's someone who's very self-secure, and what he thinks is okay now, in 10 years he's going to go back and change all sorts again. So I bet you in 10 years he'll feel the same way about the prequels as he does about the originals now.
Well, I'm going to read something out that was actually written in 1997 by Lucas, and it's maybe a couple of paragraphs long. There will only be one, and it won't be what I call a rough cut. It will be the final cut. The other one will be some sort of interesting artifact that people will look at and say, that was an earlier draft. The same thing happens with plays and earlier drafts of books. In essence, films never get finished, they get abandoned. At some point, you're dragged off the picture, kicking and screaming, while somebody says, okay, it's done. That isn't really the way it should work. Occasionally, you can go back and get your cut of the video out there, which I did on both American Graffiti and THX 1138. That's the place where it will live forever. So what ends up being important in my mind is what the DVD version is going to look like, because that's what everybody's going to remember. The other versions will disappear. Even the 35 million tapes of Star Wars out there won't last more than 30, 40 years. 100 years from now, the only version of the movie that anyone will remember will be the DVD special edition, and you'll be able to project it on a 20-foot by 40-foot screen with perfect quality. I think it's the director's prerogative, not the studio's, to go back and reinvent a movie. And that was Lucas giving an interview to American Cinematographer magazine in 1997 when the special editions came out. So, he obviously changed his mind since 1997 and has made several additions to the film. Another bunch in 2004, and then another bunch for these Blu-rays.
Could you
7-year age.
Yes.
Could you talk about some of the changes? What the actual changes that bother you?
I have 2 changes that bother me. One of them is the change that they've done for the Blu-ray one, where they've inserted...
Which is the no.
No.
The no, yeah, all right.
One of Lucas's... And I'm not a Star Wars basher. I'm not one of these, it's like, Lucas must die. I love the Star Wars movies. I've seen them pretty much every time. The reason I haven't bought a Blu-ray box set is because I don't yet own a Blu-ray player. If I did, I probably would. I just don't have one. I will get one at some point, but I spent so much money on buying DVDs. I don't want to spend all that amount of money buying Blu-rays just for the next format to come out and cause me to do it again. The
Eventually,
changes
you won't.
Eventually, I'll
it's
probably get one.
Yeah.
Yeah, eventually I'll get one. Or if somebody gives me a PS3 or whatever, it's like, I'll go out and buy some DVDs. One of Lucas's arguments tends to be that when he released the films originally, it wasn't the version that he wanted. So the reason that he's doing these changes is so he can do the version that he always had in his mind. My argument to the no is, why didn't you do that in 1983? You had the technology to put no,
Yes.
but for some reason you didn't. So that rules out the technology wasn't available to do the film.
I felt the same way when I first heard it the first few times, but I think the idea that he was going for was, how did you feel about the end of Revenge of the Sith with the Vader?
I didn't like the no either, mainly from a technical point of view, because it just sounded awful.
All right, well, I think the idea was apparently that the reason why he's done the end of the Jedi, the reason why he's added that.
Yeah.
But I see what he's doing, but yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't think it's as bad as the one when Sith was. I think it works better in here than it does in Sith. But yeah, I can see how people can have problems with it.
But you watch Jedi, and you watch the original version, and Vader is pretty much looking from left to right, and you know exactly he's trying to work out, do I save my son, or do I back up the guy that I've been following for years and years and years? You can see the conflict without some cheesy no. And then when he does it, you're like, wow, he's just throwing the Emperor down an exhaust port. You don't need him screaming, no. I don't know why he's put that in. Apparently it's because one of the stories is that's the first words that Vader ever says when he has the mask on and he finds out Padme's dead. He screams no, and then once he comes back to being Anakin, he does the no again. So it's like a bookend type thing or something along those lines.
In theory, it's a good idea, but in execution,
it's bad.
Something awful.
Yeah.
The big major thing that set this whole I can't stand these Star Wars changes off is the very, very end of Jedi when Luke sees the ghosts.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now,
completely.
You see, I don't mind that one particularly. That one I can understand. It's not cheesy in any way, but I can see how, I don't know. Explain why you don't like it. Go ahead.
Well, Return of the Jedi came out in 1983. And if you look at the IMDb, it says Return of the Jedi, 1983. At the end of the credits, 1983. Hayden Christensen's in it as a ghost. Now, Hayden Christensen would have been 2 years old. I actually looked that up. He would have been 2 in 1983. And yet somehow he's in this film as a fully grown actor. The guy who was in the film was a gentleman called Sebastian Shaw, whose name's still in the credits, but he's gone. And I get irritated by if Sebastian Shaw's got children, where's Dad? Why is he not in this film? They've just removed somebody from that film, and I find that part very, very disrespectful. Well, I get why they've done it for the continuity.
He is still in the film, though. He's in it earlier on when they take off the mask.
For how long?
Well, what about the whole deal?
You know what? That was... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
What about the whole deal? All right. At what stage in your life are you made this ghost? Because the deal is you've got Ben Kenobi, who is shown at the point that he died. That's the age his ghost appears. Yoda, whatever. Well, then you've got when Darth Vader dies, you have some young version of him on there, and that doesn't make any sense.
That would be my argument.
Apparently, it's because when Alec Guinness died, he was Ben Kenobi, so that's why he looks the way he does. When Yoda dies, same thing. When Anakin Skywalker died the first time, he became Darth. So at the end of Revenge of the Sith, apparently that's why he looks. But he didn't, because he came back, didn't he, at the end of Jedi, became Anakin Skywalker for about 30 seconds, and then died.
As an old man.
He should be an old crusty dude.
Yes, absolutely.
It hasn't been done yet, and I was terrified they'd actually do it. But I heard that they'd actually shot during the filming of Revenge of the Sith. They'd actually shot a scene of Hayden Christensen done all up, and apparently he tried to do an edit and completely remove that scene where they take the mask off and stick Hayden Christensen there instead. That was apparently he played with it and it didn't work. but I wouldn't be surprised in a future edition if that's suddenly cropped up.
But it's Sebastian Shaw, the guy who plays Anakin, that causes me to get really irritated. I think if you're going to make alterations to a film that came out in 1983, you need to change the production year of that film each time, because you're going to get children watching this film nowadays. I mean, Bob, you've got a daughter. In several years' time, if she watches Star Wars, she's going to watch it as a 1977 or a 1983 film and not know any different.
The problem that we're going to get is very similar to what's happening with pop music. Basically, it's a case of when my daughter gets to watch this, she's going to watch effectively the latest edition, and then Uncle Stuart will show her the original or whatever. Yep. And her voice, her kind of words will be, "I like the original better, not this one that you've just shown me."
Exactly. Where's Hayden gone?
Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
So, I think I would probably put her on the proper kind of original ones first.
That's my main niggle, anyways. It's the Sebastian Shaw one. I'm okay with the slight technical changes and stuff that they make. I mean, if you watch the original version of Star Wars, it wasn't in HD, it wasn't in 7.1 or whatever it is.
Oh yeah.
So I'm okay with that, which might be classed as a little bit two-faced. It's like I like the changes that I like, but I don't like the ones I don't like.
Some changes can be done without altering the storyline and the way that things flow and the way that things appear. Like you say, you change the kind of the sound quality. That's not going to affect the storyline. That's just the actual experience, should we say, of the film. If it's in 7.1 and you've got a 7.1 surround, it's going to sound better.
It will.
Yeah.
I mean, how did the Blu-rays look, Simon?
The films themselves look absolutely amazing in HD. I mean, the original films can stand up with the prequels, regardless of the fact that they were made like 20, 30 years ago. So, I mean, you can't argue with the upgrade. I mean, you see some Blu-ray movies and they're released and old and they're basically the same quality, so you can't complain there.
Yeah.
I was going to say, when he plays with it again and releases it in 3D, would we buy that?
Well, they've just announced this week that the new Blu-ray set is like the most sold Blu-ray set ever.
It is 515,000 units were sold in North America. $83 million it's made.
So I mean, you can argue that no matter what changes he does, people still buying them. So what reason has he got not to do these changes?
Yeah, I think this is the first time that all 6 have been sold together, though. So
yes, as one unit.
I mean, I also think it goes to the fact that all the deleted scenes were only available on the 6 sticks. They won with all 6 films than they were with the ones with just the separate trilogies.
Which I think is a bit of a shame, because it's not exactly the cheapest set around. And if you were on a budget and you're able to buy one set one week and one set the other, you would still miss out on all these deleted scenes. But I suppose that's a whole other argument.
What about the changes that you see that are positive? Like, for instance, they're replacing the Yoda puppet with a CGI version.
Now, how effective does that look? Because I haven't seen those.
They only did that in the first one, and it looks much better. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The puppet looked awful.
Yeah. So yeah, as far as that's concerned, yeah, they did that. I was worried they were going to go overboard and do it in Empire too, but.
I think there would be an outcry if he does it in Empire, because Frank Oz played that perfectly in Empire.
Yeah, it's so iconic now, isn't it? You can't screw around with that.
No.
Well, on top of that,
I'm sure
in Empire, he's meant to be older, so you could get away with it being, the way it is.
True.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. But there are a lot of positive changes. I like the technical changes. I don't mind the celebration scenes at the end of Jedi. Although I don't get why they changed the Ewok song from Yup Yup to whatever it is now.
Yeah.
He could have done the original song in '83. Not tell me technology wasn't there.
Did they change the song as well?
Oh yeah,
I didn't know that. I've only ever watched it from the special edition onwards, so I didn't know they've changed the song.
Yeah, the original song was some Yub Nub silliness that sounded like it came from a Muppets TV show, but it wasn't bad. It kind of suited the characters.
I know they also changed the song at the beginning in Jabba the Hutt's palace. That was the difference as well. They changed that years ago, but
It was originally a Lappy Neck or whatever it was, and now it's called Jedi Rocks, apparently.
Yeah.
What about the Ewoks now having eyelids?
I didn't notice that, to be honest.
I thought that was an improvement.
I watched that on YouTube a couple of times. And I'm like, okay, doesn't make it any worse, but no, it's it's an interesting change.
You see, what I don't understand is, you know how you say you've got a problem with Jar Jar? How do the Ewoks come off to you? Do you like the Ewoks?
I have no issue with the Ewoks at all, personally. I didn't mind them in '83. I don't mind them now. It was originally supposed to be Wookiees back in the scripting stage.
Yeah.
And I think Wookiees would have been far better. This whole deal with a bunch of like teddy bears with spears taking down all these incompetent stormtroopers, I thought that was a little bit far-fetched.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned that it should have been Wookiees, it makes a whole lot more sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have a problem with the Ewoks either. I have a big problem with Jar Jar, but
I don't understand though. How is it different in one case but not the other case?
Well, I mean, because I don't think the Ewoks are a main character. They're a group that help fight. They're made to be primitive. They don't talk much. They just do things that you like. And Jar Jar just does the opposite. He talks too much. He has way too much dialogue for for the type of character he is.
But isn't he meant to be the comedy kind of counterpoint?
And you don't need one.
3PO.
No.
It's always going to be 3PO,
Yeah.
and that's another reason why I don't like it, because they sort of take away from 3PO. It seems like they were trying to replace 3PO with Jar Jar, and that's just a bad idea.
I mean, I know they had to come up with somebody like incompetent to push the vote, and they kind of worked Jar Jar into that. But I would have been happy if he just didn't exist. I
just want to know how much big of a role he would have had in the prequels if people didn't say they didn't have such a backlash between episode 1 and episode 2 and 3. Because I'm sure he would have done more with him. He was hardly in the 2 or 3. I don't know. He thought he was a good idea, didn't he? So
yes, yeah. He thought I'll put comedy value in because there was a lot of talk about trade negotiations and all that sort of stuff. So kids are going to go, what? What's all this stuff? Let's put Jar Jar in there, A, to show how good I am at special effects, and B, it'll make people laugh.
It's the Punch and Judy show for the kids.
Yes.
I understand it's a replacement for 3PO, and because that 3PO element to all the movies, when everything is going crazy, people are dying, and it's just the comic, kind of the peanut gallery that comes from 3PO is classic, but it was poorly executed with Jar Jar.
Certainly was. But do you think it's okay for Lucas to make all these alterations? There seems to be sort of two camps. One, they're his films, he can do what he wants. Then there's the other one where, he raped my childhood, which is a phrase that's all over the internet. I don't quite agree with that one. What's your thoughts on anybody altering their films after production?
I don't have
my thoughts.
Go ahead.
Go on, sorry.
No, after you.
My thoughts would be that it's widely accepted nowadays that you've got the theatre editions that come out, etc. Then a year, 2 years later, you get the extended edition director's cut. Now that should, to my mind, should be the be-all and end-all. You've had the quotes where it's a case of, Lucas has said, this is how I wanted it to be. That should be the version. And it should be, a year or 2 years after the release of the theatre edition, not 30 years.
I mean, for the most part, the changes themselves don't. I just think, right, the way he's done it, right, if he wants to do these changes, these films, that's up to him, it's his films, but he should make the original versions out there for people that don't want these changes, He's basically released these films as if that's it, that's what you have. You don't like them, don't buy them. But he should offer an alternative for the original fans that want the original versions and still crave the original versions. And he's not doing that.
I mean, can you imagine kind of the descendants of Vincent van Gogh saying, really, I don't really like that picture. I'm going to touch it up now because that's the way he would have wanted it.
Yep. What you've also got to remember, though,
the problem is this isn't a descendants, though, for Vincent van Gogh. This is Vincent van Gogh
Vincent
itself.
doing himself.
So he can basically do whatever he wants,
What you've also got to remember, though, is Lucas only directed Star Wars, not counting the prequels, but he only directed Episode 4. He didn't do Empire. He didn't do Jedi.
I mean, a lot of
his work. The director of Jedi died. He died many, many years ago, a guy called Richard Marquand, yet he's still got a director's credit of Return of the Jedi, even these Blu-rays and all the special editions. But yet he didn't direct that film the way it is out there now.
Many people consider Empire to be the best Star Wars film, and most of the good things in that film were brought to it by Evan Kirshner and the great character moments in that. I mean, there's a lot of theory that the best films that George Lucas made weren't the ones he directed.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, Star Wars is a classic, and I like Empire, I like Jedi. Phantom Menace, I'm fine with. Attack of the Clones, I don't. Revenge of the Sith, fine by me. So I'm certainly not a Star Wars basher. But it does niggle me, as you said, Simon, that he should have all versions out there, not replace them.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
A la Blade Runner.
Yes, very much.
Yeah. You know what? That's a film I still haven't seen.
You have to watch that.
You need to just unplug your microphone and go watch it.
Yes, you need to go away, Simon, and watch Blade Runner.
It's in the list. It's on the list.
Do you guys really think Blade Runner stood the test of time? I watched that recently.
I do.
I do, yes.
I watched it recently, and I mean, I see, things that could have been done, but there's so many video games and stuff now that before I saw Blade Runner, that I wouldn't have got some of the stuff. But now I look at it and go, oh, well, that reminds me of Blade Runner.
Oh, yeah.
Which version did you watch, Anthony?
It was definitely the director's cut, but then there are like 15 different versions.
But what Ridley Scott did there is put all the versions on the DVD box set. There's a 5-version box set out there. Brilliant.
Yeah, there was a version that jumped off the internet onto my screen, or whatever version that was.
Which is the best version? That was a good question that Simon asked. Which version should he watch? The one with the voiceover or the one without the voiceover?
With.
Definitely with, on my view. Okay.
Yeah. All right, well, I'll look out for that then. I'll buy it.
Look for one called Blade Runner: The Final Cut.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one I was gonna buy. Yeah, I've got it on the list, of stuff I'll eventually get to. But
yeah.
I mean, the whole concept on that. I know we're kind of drifting off the Star Wars, but literally with Blade Runner, he brought the cyberpunk genre to the forefront.
Yes, he did. And way before a lot of other people did as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so did Star Wars. So it was like, you can say that Star Wars is the precursor to a lot of space-based movies. Blade Runner is the precursor to, Terminator even. And
yes, very much so. The robots and everything, and anything to do with androids.
Yeah, with no Star Wars, it probably wouldn't be a Blade Runner.
Now, I don't know if you saw the kind of recent interview that William Shatner did, where he pretty much slams Star Wars and says that everything about Star Wars is just a take from Star Trek.
No, everything about Star Wars is just a take from Akira Kurosawa, but we won't go into that.
Hidden Fortress and Seven Samurai and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
most definitely.
Yes.
Yep. But which filmmaker hasn't stolen stuff? They all do it. Yep. Going back to Star Wars, Simon.
Going back to Star Wars, have any of you got a chance to see the Clone Wars and see what you think of that?
No. It's one I want to.
The animated?
Yeah, the animated series.
Yes, I saw it. I took my kids to see it, and oddly enough, they weren't impressed with it. I liked being able to fill in the gap between episodes 2 and 3. So for me, it was just sort of I need to see this so I know what happened.
Yeah.
But for them, it was, even though it was animated and cutesy, they really didn't enjoy it as much as they enjoyed the live action.
The anime, are you talking about the film, the feature film?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm talking about the series, the actual television series. Have you seen the chat?
Okay. No, I didn't see much of that.
Yeah, some of the episodes from that are really good. They've gone right to the roots of the original trilogy, and they're actually really good. You should check them out.
I've heard a lot of good things about them.
Yeah.
I have. I've just not managed to get around to watching any of them yet. Too busy watching everything else.
Is that going to be our homework then, Stuart?
It could well be to watch the Clone Wars. Yep, you let me source that, Bob, and I shall pass them on to you.
So that's me and you on the Clone Wars. Simon's on Blade Runner.
Yep. and reviews for every. What sort of things have you not seen, Anthony? Ralph? Any guilty things that are missing off your list?
I've still not seen what is the big movie of last year that everybody says is like the greatest movie ever, The Dream.
Oh,
Dream.
Inception.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Oh, that should be your homework then. That's a very
Very
good
worth
film.
watching.
It is. Yeah. What's Ralph not seen?
I don't know. I think I've seen all the sci-fi movies. I make it a point to catch them all. Even the ones I don't think I'm gonna like.
I was going to say, have you watched the Kurosawa originals for that some of the Star Wars stuff was based on?
No.
No, I haven't done that. And I haven't even watched all the Blu-rays, so I definitely want to finish those. Just so I can see all the differences. I'm still on episode 2 as far as the Blu-rays go, and I haven't got it all the way to 6. It's a very long series, so it's hard to sit down and.
It's getting that free time.
Yeah.
And how do you think they look on Blu-ray?
They look great. I mean, I love HD. I mean, I'm to the point where I've kind of spoiled myself about it. I've had a PS3 since 2006, and so I watch as much stuff in HD as I possibly can. And I was excited, for this to come out, and it looks great. I'm just kind of curious of whether or not by buying the box sets now, should I have waited till the 3D version has come out? Because I do own a 3D TV, but I was just excited to finally have a set.
I think, though, if you waited and bought the 3D version, you would be asking yourself the same question. Do I hold off buying these 3D ones, or do I wait for the other thing that's coming out? So you'll end up never buying them.
Yeah.
Stuart, now, how do you feel about the biggest change that's been made in the Star Wars movies, and biggest by most talked about, most most angering, and that would be Han Solo not shooting first.
When you started saying that sentence, I was thinking, which change is he getting? And I'm like, that one.
Yeah.
I think it's a stupid change because I prefer the Han Solo who kind of was a bad guy, who just wouldn't think twice about gunning somebody down because that's the person he was.
He's a rogue. Of course he is.
Exactly.
He's going to protect his own interests.
I don't need him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, to put an analogy in there, it'd be like Jack Sparrow in the in the Pirates of the Caribbean thing. You know he's a bad guy, but he's you feel for him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was a daft change.
Kind of thing.
And again, if this was the way he always envisioned the films, he could have done that in 1977.
Yes.
I honestly think he's winging it and just making all this as it comes along.
No, I think he's doing what everybody does. I mean, if you take one of the best songs of all time, whatever that may be, recorded by a young artist, and then you take that same artist in his 50s or his 60s and say, right, re-record that, it's not going to be the same because he's a different person.
Yeah,
Lucas is a different person now.
And everything, yeah.
He's a different filmmaker now than he was when he was a young, hungry sort of filmmaker hanging around with Coppola and Brian De Palma and Spielberg.
Yeah, but don't you think that hunger gives it an edge?
It certainly does. You look at John Carpenter, his early stuff like Halloween and Escape from New York. Love those films. Look at the things he's bringing out now. He's lost some of the fire that he had in his early days.
And I think it's too easy and too relaxed.
Yeah.
I heard a rumor out there that there's someone out there trying to get permission to make a Boba Fett movie. Get permission from George to do a film. I think a Star Wars film not directed by George Lucas would be good. So, maybe.
I think he'd insist on directorial kind of,
I don't know. I think, to be honest, judging from what I've seen from the Blu-ray set, I don't think he actually likes directing that much. I mean, I know he did direct the original 3, but I think he'd be if he was someone he trusted to step in there, I think he'd be perfectly happy doing that, so he doesn't have to do the writing and stuff.
That's the thing, though. It's the trust. Do you think he could trust anyone, knowing what you do of the kind of person that Lucas is?
Well,
I think the only one he trusts is Spielberg.
Yeah, I don't really think he's reliable either.
No, not after Indiana Jones 4.
Nah. Yeah.
But
there's also the live action TV series that's supposed to be coming out as well any year now.
Are you getting all
and what is
excited
that going
about
to be
that?
based on? What time frame?
And the rumor is it's going to be about Boba Fett too. So I don't know.
Yeah, there was rumors about it being in the Old Republic sort of days. So it wouldn't be Luke's and Leia's and stuff. But...
Ralph mentioned earlier the books. I've listened to a lot of the audiobooks, and I think the storylines in a lot of the books and audiobooks and all that, I think a lot of those would make really, really good Star Wars movies.
Yeah, particularly Legacy of the Force. That was by far the best Star Wars series that I've read. It could almost be turned into a 7, 8, and 9.
Some of the trailers for this new Old Republic game are absolutely amazing. Have you seen any? Has any of you seen any of them?
Yeah.
Nope.
Yes.
If they made them into a film, like an animation film, and some of the stuff in those trailers, those would be good films.
The original Knights of the Old Republic, really that and 1 and 2, that was some of the best Star Wars fiction that I'd come across. Just because I feel like they really got the universe, and it was earlier stuff. It wasn't the same time frame, but it kind of laid a groundwork for the movies. You kind of get a feeling for what the galaxy was like, with more Jedi and stuff like that. I really think anybody that hasn't played the Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2 that's a Star Wars fan should go back. And on PC, you can usually get the first one for like $2.
Yeah.
That would be
I
me.
just don't like that they keep going back. It's like everyone wants to go back to the good old days where Jedis were everywhere and things like that. But I really like I said, Legacy of the Force is my favorite story. And I would really love it if somebody could, if George Lucas or if he could trust someone to make that movie or tell that story in some way.
Is that focused mostly on their kids?
Yeah, that's focused on the kids. It's the kids of Luke and Mara and Han and Leia.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
The Heir to the Empire books are amazing by
I read
Timothy Zahn. They're incredible. You can tell he's told. He obviously got. He really. I've read a couple of the EU, the books and the those are the books that I think are nearest to the them and the Legacy of the Force are probably the best.
Which books would you recommend, Ralph, for somebody that's not read any of the Star Wars books?
I recommend just starting with the Legacy of the Force. I would. I mean, if you read there was a series that came out before, but it was more based for teenagers. It wasn't like a full novel. And you don't really need to read it in order to understand where it's picking up from. I mean, all of us are pretty much Star Wars fans. You'll pick it up really quickly. They make a few references to some older books that you might not get, but if you start with, I think Betrayal is the first book in Legacy of the Force, and then it goes on to 9 books after that. But it was a really good series, and it almost mirrors the way things happen in the movie. There's the beginning where they kind of, hey, this is where we are. Then there's a sort of Empire Strikes Back where everything just goes to hell, and a Return to Jedi where the Force is once again balanced. And they, like I said, it could easily be another 7, 8, and 9, and or another trilogy.
Yeah.
Do you think he'll ever do it? 9? How long it will be before he does them?
No, I don't think so. I hate to say it, but I'm kind of waiting for him to, maybe pass the torch to someone else.
Well, he has a son, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure whether his son's into filmmaking or anything like that. I would hope he would be.
It's his daughter that runs the. It looks like set to take over Lucasfilm. Yeah. So it'll be up to her, I think. Though George has always said that it's his movie, so he says that the films would die with him. But I don't know.
This is also the guy that said in 1997 there would just be one version, and also in several interviews there was originally supposed to be 9 films. That's on record that he said that, and yet in other interviews he's denied saying it. He's like, nope, there was always meant to be 6. So it changes his mind.
I've been listening to the commentaries on the Blu-ray set. Probably some of them were probably the ones that were on the original releases, and he was talking about the original trilogy, and apparently that the Death Star was supposed to be when they blow up the Death Star at the end of the first one. In the original script, that was supposed to happen at the end of Jedi, and because of that, he condensed it and changed it and made a second Death Star for the last one.
Really? Didn't know that. But the commentaries do give you quite a good insight. Other than I get a bit annoyed listening to Ben Burt talking about sound effects, but
Well, just on the comment of the Death Stars, what was the time period meant to be between the first film and the last film of the original trilogy? Anyone know?
No.
I think episode 5 itself is supposed to be like a year, isn't it, in long, that Luke spends on Dagobah. So
Yeah, and then basically between the end of episode 4, when they blow up the Death Star, and say the beginning of episode 6, roughly what's the time frame meant to be?
How quick do they get the second Death Star built?
Well, bearing in this is it. If you bear in mind the size of this thing, it's going to be built in orbit.
And they
how fast can they put one together?
And they started building the fit, and it took 15. How long is it supposed to be between 3 and 4? How old?
That is, it's about 18 years, and I think Luke's 19 in the first Star Wars movie, I believe.
Yeah, okay, if you think about it, they stopped building the first Death Star at the end of Revenge of the Sith, so it took them 19 years to build the first Death Star.
Something that's effectively a small moon.
It did, actually, but I suppose then you've got the first one was a test, so they obviously had to finalise everything. Then they managed to think, right, we know what we're doing now, so they would have been able to put it a little bit quicker, but
maybe they laid down
not in 12 months.
A couple of years later,
Yeah. I'd never thought about that one.
It's just one of those things that bugs me because of the size of it,
Yeah, true.
I never got the same feeling that the Jedi was as big as the original, though, in Episode 4. They never really refer to it as a moon, it's just kind of there.
I suppose that's the thing, with the way that technology's moved on, you've gone from, as someone said earlier, switches to touch screens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. That is one of the weird things about watching the prequels before the original trilogy. The technology seems to, go backwards.
Right.
Yeah, and they could have made buttons and switches look good. There's a way to do it. Star Trek, I think, well, not in the latest movie, but in the other movies, they, in the original Star Trek movies, I think they did really well in not going crazy with the new technology.
Yes.
Not until Next Generation did they finally make that leap, but and it worked well.
Yeah. I would be
I've got to say, having been on the Star Trek experience in Vegas, it's very good that way, the way that they've done everything.
Is that still there?
Yeah.
It's on my bucket list. I gotta get there one day.
It's worth looking into. Yeah, it's down
I
at
heard they closed it down, but they've only just reopened it, haven't it, this year? With the new success of the new film.
Ooh. Well, like I say, a lot of it was based on, next gen more than anything.
Isn't there a Quarks bar and stuff from DS9?
There is, and they've got people wandering around. It's staffed by, I know I shouldn't really be saying it this way, but there is a very gay Klingon walking around.
I think that's a contradiction, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Fierce warrior that holds his spear with a somewhat limp wrist.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wrong kind of fierce.
Exactly. Yeah. Fierce.
While we're on about Star Trek, though, who's seen Star Trek: The Motion Picture, the one that came out in '79?
Oh,
I've seen it. Yeah. One of my favorites.
And who bought that one on DVD when it came out?
Nope.
Silent Stephanie.
Well, that was actually changed in a similar way to Star Wars as well. Robert Wise was given a bunch of extra money, and they actually altered that as well. So they CG'd a lot of things in there.
Didn't he spend like 20 minutes on just a close-up shot of this ship at the beginning?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that was CG altered as well. But not that many people obviously bought it, so nobody noticed. It's not just Lucas that does it. Spielberg did it with E.T.
Well, see, we've had the big outcry about the no, but there you go. It's taken from Star Trek with Death of Spock.
Yeah, I heard they spent like $2 million just CG and William Shatner's hair, and gut.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was the number.
I think I heard that one as well, but that is a lot of
Increasing one and
pixels.
receding the other.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
That is a lot of pixels.
A lot of people said the new movie is a complete rip-off of the original Star Wars, haven't they?
Oh, grief. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
No.
The way it was written, something like a farm boy goes into a cantina-like environment and meets a old guy and shows him the way on the path.
Yep.
Like it's if you really think about it,
yeah.
it's a blatant rip-off of Star Wars.
Yeah, but it was always done that way. The storyline on the original Star Trek from like '66 was that.
Yeah. Well,
I
what I
think
mean
what's
is by bringing back old Spock and having him like the Obi-Wan character,
Oh yeah, definitely.
showing him the way.
Yeah. Now, who's seen the altered version of ET that came out for its anniversary? Was anybody unfortunate enough to watch that one where did CG replace things?
I can
No.
happily say no.
I was unaware.
Have they CG'd the ET puppet, or is it still a puppet?
Say again, sorry?
Did he completely do away with the puppet? Or?
No, I heard
No.
the CG Drew Barrymore. She's no longer in it.
Yeah, they removed the cocaine from her nose.
Right.
Now, what they'd actually done is there was an extra scene in there of E.T. under bathwater, blowing bubbles or breathing underwater. Not a major issue with that one. The scene looks a little bit silly. But what they'd actually done was the scene just before they fly over the moon, the kids fly over some police cars on their BMXs. They'd CG removed all the policemen's guns and replaced them all with CG walkie-talkies.
Oh no, Lucas had something in there, didn't he?
Yep. So Spielberg did it.
What's the reason for that? So they're not violent.
Mainly the reason was, why would policemen point guns at children?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
So,
Because it was the 80s, and that's how things were done.
Yeah, flying kid. I'm pulling a gun if I see a flying kid.
Yeah, there's something
especially
seriously weird going on.
if children are cycling around with something that's come from outer space, which could potentially have a virus that will wipe out the entire planet, shoot them.
Sure.
All right, that's right. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Spielberg's gone on record in the past few weeks. He regrets those changes, and he will never ever tinker again with any of his films. So
Yeah.
he's backtracked. And to be fair to Spielberg, when he brought that version out, he packaged it with the original version as a DVD as well.
Good man.
Yeah.
But he regrets it. He said he felt over emotional and sentimental at the time, and that's why he made the changes. But he regrets doing it.
What's weird was George Lucas actually did do that last year. He released all the original 3 on DVD on a 2-disc set with the original, but it's like they've gone back to Blu-ray and he's completely done away with it again and just released the remastered versions.
Yeah, he has more space on Blu-ray, and he could have put
Exactly. There's no
every
excuse for it.
alteration he's ever made in there, and still had room to spare.
Yeah.
But I
So
ran out
it's-
and bought those. I ran out and bought those versions with the original versions on. So,
Yeah, I thought about it, but I've been waiting all this time for the Blu-ray, so it's finally here. So I went and got it.
I'm gonna wait on the Blu-ray and just hold out for the hologram version.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
as from next year, the prequels are actually, in fact, the whole saga is actually being released. Apparently, one each year in 3D.
Yeah, but the deal is that Phantom Menace has to make so much for the second one to come out and so on and so on. So
It's not gonna happen.
I don't know.
Is it?
But that's just it. I mean, if people hated the Phantom Menace, no one's gonna go and buy to see that just to see A New Hope in 3D.
No.
3D
know-
Jar Jar Binks.
I've got to
know.
admit, if they release the Phantom Menace on the big screen, I mean, because of my vision, I wear glasses anyway. 3D doesn't work for me, so I won't go and watch them. But if they released Phantom Menace on the big screen in 2D, I would probably go and watch it, because those films are amazing on the big screen.
They've just released Jurassic Park, haven't they, in the cinema?
They have. I
It's in
feel
the
old.
cinema again.
I feel old because I saw that the first time it came out in the big screen.
Yep.
Now it's an anniversary edition. Grim. But that is brilliant. If you've not seen that on the big screen, Simon, or anybody, go and watch it, because that is
Yeah,
a
but it's
totally
only in
different...
3D, isn't it? I don't like 3D. I think it's crap. But
I don't think they've done that in 3D, Jurassic
is it in
Park.
3D? But why have they
don't believe-
re-released it then?
I don't believe so. I think because it's its anniversary.
Oh, right, yeah, I might watch it.
It's like
then, yeah.
20 years old or whatever, but that film is phenomenal on a big screen because
Yeah,
it's
it's a
so
classic, yeah.
loud. It just works. It really does work. I would be tempted to go and watch that one.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So anyway, do we give the thumbs up or the thumbs down to Lucas being able to tinker around with stuff?
Thumbs in the middle.
Yeah, I think probably. I mean, looking at all the changes he's made, I mean, I looked up the changes from every version of every movie, of the 6 that he's done, and I think probably 75% of the changes are probably positive. Audio changes, lighting changes, an enhancement here, there, and CG or whatever. I think 25 or maybe 20% are questionable, and maybe 5% just really bad. So I don't think it's near as bad as what everybody makes it out to be. I just think it's the ones that are.
If you're someone like me who grew up with the prequels and doesn't really hate them as much as you would if you grew up with the originals, then I think you wouldn't necessarily bother you that much from putting you off from watching them. But if you, like you lot, enjoyed them in the original go and the original fans, they should have put the original versions out there.
Yeah, I would love to have the original versions out there
That's
as
the
well.
problem, yeah. I mean, the changes themselves, for the most part, for the positive, and I think for the most part, I think the thumbs up on the changes. But for the some of the changes they do are negative, and he shouldn't do them.
My thoughts are very much on the negative side. I would say thumbs down. How many times can you buy the same film?
But the thing is, though, I mean, if Lucas had made no changes whatsoever to these Blu-rays, I think the sales figures would be pretty much the same.
Yeah. I think if he'd just released it as a one-off box set, no changes.
But if he didn't do that and he just released them, people would be complaining that he didn't do it. He's not done anything to them, and that he's just basically stuck them out there. He's at least, all right. The changes are bad for the most part, but some of the changes he's done make the film look better in Blu-ray.
As Anthony sort of said, with the technical changes, I'm fine, with the upgrading and the audio enhancements and stuff. But I think it's focusing on these, like the nose and the CGI blinks and all these, weird things. I don't think he needs to do those.
How many times can you buy the same movie?
Yes.
Because that's effectively what it is. The storyline's not changing. You're just adding tweaks.
But they're all doing that, aren't they? I mean, they're all re-releasing the films over and over again to just particularly blame George Lucas in general for that.
I don't blame him.
It's a money machine, isn't it?
Exactly. They're in it to make the money.
Whenever there's a new format come out, they'll turn out a new Blu-ray set, and that's just the way it is, and people will still buy it.
From that point of view, though, there's not much difference than remakes. You say how many times can you buy the same movie? When they do remakes, that's the same thing. The storyline. It just looks.
I don't agree with remakes.
Really? Yeah, I mean, it seems to be the same thing.
I mean, you look at films like The Italian Job and what have you, and you just think, look, why change? Make something that do a remake of something that didn't work first time.
Yeah.
It's basically a case of we're 20 years on, technology's moved on, we can perhaps make this better. It didn't work first time, let's do that. Rather than, hey, look, there's a classic. It made money the first time. Let's totally screw it over.
I think with The Italian Job,
I
if you
agree.
took the 12 people that actually saw The Italian Job at the cinema, the remake, how many of those would have seen the original? Probably not that many, unfortunately. So
True.
I think that's some of the argument for remakes.
It's the same with a lot of the remakes. There are some that are worth seeing, but they are few and far between, I'm afraid.
We have a remake of Straw Dogs coming out now. Yeah.
I don't think it's close to your own thoughts is the one of Pacino's.
They're making a remake. They're making a remake of Beetlejuice, aren't they?
They are, yes.
Why it wasn't? Oh, I guess that's going back to the argument of, hey, let's take a bad one and make it better. But
well, yeah, true.
Remake of Point Break coming out.
Why?
Yeah, but a lot of people probably haven't seen the original. But you know what? Go back and watch the original one.
Yeah.
It's a good film. I think it is anyway.
I think within the last few weeks I read something about that. I think Johnny Depp, they were they were going to have him for Beetlejuice before in a casting call. They changed it or whatever. Have you ever read that?
No, that would make sense though, because Tim Burton pretty much works with Johnny Depp every Wednesday or whatever, doesn't he?
Exactly.
And what about the remake of Rise of the Planet of the Apes? Did any of you get a chance to see that?
Oh, good movie.
Horrible.
I liked it.
That was an excellent movie. That some remakes are for the best.
I liked
At
it.
least it didn't have Charlton Heston in.
Yeah.
Well, at least they managed to I think in my mind anyway, make up for that awful Mark Wahlberg one.
I don't like when a remake just completely obliterates the story, which is what I think Planet of the Apes did. So I don't like it. I mean, the special effects and the apes look like apes. It was really, I can appreciate the special effect, and the cinematics in it, but I just don't like when the story's been completely changed.
And were you a big fan of Planet of the Apes prior?
I mean, no, I wasn't. Not like I'm a Star Wars fan or a Star Trek fan, or it was just something I watched and I enjoyed it. And it's not on my top 10 list, but
I wonder if because I've never really been a big fan of it. It always seemed a little campy to me. But watching this, I did like it because of the way it went, and I thought maybe that would have something to do with it. The level of fandom prior to the change.
I think the idea itself is a good idea, so it's just a film. It's one of those film series that they can just keep turning out a new one. So,
what do you guys think about Superman?
I'm a little bit nervous after the last Superman film. I will always judge them from Superman 1 and Superman 2, unfortunately.
Yeah, me too. That's what I'm saying. It's like, what do you think of Superman Returns?
DC really need this one to be a success, I think, after Green Lantern. So...
Have you seen the new Superman, his costume? The one that's coming out in 2013?
Yeah, I've seen it.
That is somewhat obscene. It seems like Superman a la Tom Jones.
Yeah. Again, I just don't like redoing stories. Just take this. There's lots of Superman stories that are untold. I mean, they could tell the Doomsday story. I mean,
and how do you not have?
Aren't they redoing the Superman 2 story? Aren't they for the
yes,
General Zod and?
How do you
but it's the same with all of the comic book characters. You look at like Batman, similar kind of thing. There's so much good fiction out there.
Yeah, but I think
that they could turn into a fantastic
more with Batman
film
than it does in most films. So.
How do you not have Tom Welling play the movie version? He was so good on Smallville. How do you pull this generic dude that looks like a young version of somebody's grandpa
yeah, that would have been awesome
with a giant codpiece? That is embarrassing. What is he even doing out there?
Tom Welling puts in 10 years of homework for that role and doesn't get it.
Ridiculous.
Like, really? No, I was a fan of Tom Welling.
Oh, yeah.
Well, if this one flops, I think it would be inevitable that they'll get him to do another movie to try and cash in on the success of that. So
I think if this one flops, it'll be a few years before they try one again. They've already got a bit of a bloody nose from the last Superman movie.
Yeah.
What about Batman? Do you think Batman they'll just continue making them after Nolan finishes his film?
I know exactly what's happening to that. After Nolan finishes, the Batman series is being rebooted.
Wow.
I mean, one of the things I heard was doing a live action series, but like a serious one instead of like the Adam West Booth. I think that'd be awesome if they did like a really dark TV series of Batman and Gotham.
But there's too much money in the big screen versions. You spit out a 2-hour film and this thing rakes in nearly $1 billion. Wow. So I think they'll stick to the films for a little while. But apparently they are rebooting it with Nolan as producer, not as director.
I mean, I'd love to see them do Killing Joke as the storyline. But again, you've got like...
I don't understand why they have to reboot it. Why can't they simply just carry on? I mean, there's so many stories they could have done. And
exactly,
I mean, with the third one, I mean, so many... I mean, I'm really disappointed they didn't even attempt to do the Riddler in this new one that they've got coming out.
Yeah, I think they were going to do it at one point because, yet again, Johnny Depp was touted around as some sort of figure in that one. They were originally... I think it's a mistake doing Catwoman, but I trust Christopher Nolan, so hopefully he'll do well. But I'm a bit nervous about Catwoman. Every time she's in a film... Anne Hathaway.
Ooh.
I mean, I wasn't sure about Dan Hardy, but after just seeing Warrior, I think this is a guy that really does well in film roles, so I think it could be awesome.
Yeah.
One problem with the continuous reboots, though, is you always have to burn one movie up on the origin story.
Yeah. That's my worry about the Superman film. I don't need to see that he comes from Krypton, blah, blah.
No.
I can't believe they're doing the Spider-Man one again.
Yeah. But that's something to do with the rights as well, isn't it? I think the Sony have only got the rights for 2 more Spider-Man movies or something, and it reverts back to Marvel. So I think they're trying to
Why didn't
apologise
we
for number
wait
3.
to do the Avenger one then, when it's all under the Marvel banner then, instead of doing it now?
Yeah, I would love to see a new Avengers movie.
The Spider-Man thing. I mean, you think they want to do Avengers with Spider-Man, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but you're talking about waiting a long time before that would happen.
I mean, they've got all the new Avengers now. They've got Wolverine, Spider-Man, Iron Man, and Captain America.
I don't think they do. I don't think they do have Wolverine. Isn't X-Men also with an independent party because of if not, how come they're not being included in this Avengers thing?
I think there's a certain number of X-Men movies as well that they can do before it reverts back to Marvel, because these X-Men movies and Spider-Man movies were being done before sort of Marvel Studios kicked off. So I think, I'm not quite sure on the number of X-Men movies that they've got before it reverts back, but it's a small number. It's either 1 or 2.
Ralph,
this should be like one of the biggest epic flops in history if this Avengers movie sucks.
I don't think it'll be a success. So I don't know why, but I'm not worried about it.
All this build, and if it absolutely sucks, it would be the biggest flop ever.
Ralph, how do you feel about the new X-Men movie? Are we going to be on opposite sides of the fence on that?
Again, I don't like the story. I've read X-Men comics since number 1, so I don't like when they destroy the story. I've not been a fan of the X-Men series since the first one because the story is wrong. It's completely wrong.
They've completely butchered the storyline of those movies. Completely.
Yeah.
If you look at the first one and the fourth one, complete storyline errors.
I think that's another example of me not knowing as much about the comic book history because I really liked First Class.
Yeah.
It's not even about the comics, is it? It's about the films themselves. I mean, if you just look at the films, the storyline continuity errors in the films themselves, never mind the comics.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's poorly done. I mean, I understand that they're trying to bring it up to date and that there are certain things in the way the story was told in 1970, certain political and viewpoints and things like that just wouldn't work today. But, they don't have to go so far to, completely rearrange everything. I mean, and it even started the first one with the whole, the Nazi, the Holocaust.
Right.
And,
yes.
So I thought they were on the right track. But then, I think out of the X-Men series, the first one is the only one that I can probably appreciate, even though I had a lot of problems with it. But after I saw the second one, I completely just given up on the whole series.
The first one was the strongest regarding the original storylines.
See, I tend to just watch those as movies because I've never read an X-Men comic, never seen an X-Men cartoon, so I just watched it purely
as a movie, the new one's brilliant. It's a good movie.
Yeah.
Just the storyline just been completely butchered.
Yeah.
Oops.
Like the Phoenix. I mean, that could have been a movie in itself, the whole Phoenix saga. And they just completely... It's
not only that, like, you look at first... All right, it was absolute crap, but you look at X-Men Origins, right? And they built up the story that he was in a wheelchair when he took in all the people. No, he was walking when he took in Scott and all that.
Yeah.
And all that. But in the fourth one... He was in the new one they've just done. He's crippled already, and he's not even met Cyclops and any of them yet.
Yeah, so.
I mean, one of my favourite characters has been hardly touched, and that's Gambit.
Oh yes.
Aren't they doing a film though? A spin-off film of that after the? I read they were going to do a single, like an Origins movie of just him.
Not heard anything that way, but I'm happy to be contradicted if anyone knows anything else.
I'm afraid I don't, unfortunately.
He was in the Wolverine movie?
He was.
Yeah, he was.
There was literally nothing there, and they didn't make him the way that he was in the comics and various things.
They're doing a Weapon X one as well, aren't they, from the Origins movie? I don't really get it how a film like that completely was sucked, and they're managing to do all these spin-offs from it.
because people just like Wolverine, and they don't really care about the other characters that were destroyed in those. I mean, Deadpool. They really didn't tell Gambit's story. I don't. There's a lot of characters that I really liked. I liked Angel. I liked Archangel. And they just in the third movie of X-Men: Last Stand, they just made him look like a bad character. Like one, not even part of the X-Men at all, and two, just as just a bystander.
Yeah, a throwaway, basically.
Yeah, when he was one of the original X-Men, it was Jean, Cyclops, Angel, Beast, and Iceman. I mean, and so how can you take an original X-Men and make him into a bystander? So there's just lots of problems I have.
Yeah.
So it's definitely wise separating the mythology of these things to the actual movies themselves. I suppose the movies would alienate fanboys, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Do you think? Yep.
I think someone will always find a fault in them. Because everyone has their own interpretation of some of the happenings. But
I'm after jumping into the comics, but I have no idea where to start, particularly in the Marvel ones.
Anybody got any tips?
Marvel. I would start with Avengers.
Just start with the beginning of the series.
Well, I mean, I would start with the new Avengers. It's I think the series started in the 90s, so it's starting all the way back to a series that started in the 60s and 70s is probably going to it's probably going to seem really dry. Yeah. Well, that too. But I just think the story itself isn't going to be appreciated as much as something that was, it's more up to date and more current. And I think all the characters in Avengers, like their origin stories, so you don't need to know where they came from. It's just sort of you'll be starting kind of, hey, here's how the new Avengers formed, and go from there. And I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
So as we bring it back round to Star Wars as well, if I'm going to go out and buy some Star Wars books, Ralph, I've read the Timothy Zahn stuff, but it was many, many years ago, so I may read those again at some point. What would be a good book for me to, just so I can make a note here, pick it up?
Okay.
A good series to start.
I would start Legacy of the Force, definitely. That is, the first book I believe is called Betrayal. Then another good series is
Legacy. The Legacy books are very good.
Yeah.
Oh, you said that. So.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of. I'm sorry. I'm drawing a blank on the other series now. There's a couple of others that are pretty good. But I can't think of them at the moment. The
Darth Bane ones are pretty good.
Which ones?
The Darth Bane ones. They're kind of set at the beginning. Yeah. But yeah, they're very good. The novels, although the films themselves are crap, the novelizations, the prequels are also good.
Well, novelization of the first Star Wars was quite good because it tells you all about the volcano battle when Anakin became Vader type thing. And
I'm quite lazy, so I don't actually listen. I didn't actually read the books. I downloaded the audio books
audios
you can get online, and I found one that Anthony Daniels did.
Yeah,
it's just weird.
Yeah, you have to listen to it's way much better to listen to a Star Wars books than it is to read it, because after watching the films, the sound effects kind of become part of the story. So
then there's the radio dramas as well. They're good.
Yeah,
the radio dramas are very, very good. Star Wars and Empire definitely. Jedi was not the best one in the world, but Star Wars and Empire added so much material to those stories. They're very, very good, and a lot of the original voices. And I think Hamill and Anthony Daniels were in the first two, I believe. So they're very, very good. Recommend those. So what are your hopes for? Sorry, carry on.
I was gonna say that's another thing. The reason why I like Legacy of the Force, because more than because it's based on after Jedi, and Luke is in it, and Han Solo's in it, and the voice actor is very good at mimicking the original actors' voices. So you really get into so you really get immersed into the story without. If you listen to a book where, I think the New Jedi Order, that's another series that I listen to, and the guy didn't sound like Luke. So, the whole time I'm trying to get into this story, I'm constantly being irritated by the fact that the voice is wrong. So,
Yeah.
What about the Legacy? What about the Legacy comics? Have you read them?
No.
The comics are amazing. They're really good.
So what are your hopes for the Star Wars films if you could sit Lucas down and other than ask him to do a follow-up to Howard the Duck? What would you like to say to him?
Do the live-action television series because I don't know, something on Boba Fett would be awesome. Even, I don't know. If he kind of stayed away from the main plot of the films, because doing that upsets too many people, and starts from scratch and builds Boba Fett, I think that'd be really good. Like a dark TV series around Boba Fett, which is what I hear the live action series is supposed to be.
How many episodes in a season would you do of that one? Would you do maybe 6,
Well,
12, 24?
Apparently he said he's got 500 scripts on the shelf for that series. So the only reason why it's on the shelf right now is apparently they don't have a way of doing it, because he wants to basically do it with a feature budget for a television series. So he's going to find a way to develop technology to get the results of
what he should do is reach in his pocket, because he has the ability to do it.
Yeah, but for 500 episodes, so it'll be like 500 features. I don't even think he's got that kind of money.
Oh, I do. I mean, that's the one thing I like about Lucas, that he definitely funded the prequels himself. Paid for it out of his own pocket. I love the fact that he got the merchandising things from the studios back in the 70s, because they just went, yeah, whatever, you can have the toy rights. Boy, were they kicking themselves for years and years. I love the way that he's done the films. I would just love him to stop tinkering with the original versions, other than technical upgrades.
It's amazing looking back, right, watching films before Star Wars and how much things changed after Star Wars. Like the credits, he was the first one to have the really long credits at the end of the film.
Well, he got sued. I think it was either on Empire or Star Wars itself. He got sued by the Directors Guild because he didn't have credits at the beginning of the movie, directed by and so on. And he refused to put credits on the beginning, and he got hit with a hefty fine. Which thankfully that law's now changed, but he did well. So who's got any final thoughts on the whole roundup?
Go ahead, Ralph.
Okay. Well, I was just gonna say I have mixed feelings about it, because I would love to see Legacy of the Force into a movie, but I don't want to see it as animated. So, and I know that in the Legacy of the Force has Luke and Han and Leia in it, and I really doubt that. I know for a fact Harrison Ford already said publicly he would not do another Star Wars movie.
I think he's a bit old for it now.
Well, I mean, they're old in the book. This takes place like 25 years after Jedi.
There's no way in hell Carrie Fisher can play Princess Leia in 2011. Have you seen her lately?
Hey,
no, but
she's hit the weight loss thing here recently. She's
sorry, yeah, but I don't know.
Yeah, did you know
she was okay in the Jane Silent Bob one?
Do you know how much money Carrie Fisher makes from Princess Leia toys and stuff? Do you know how much money she makes? Nothing.
Wow.
Whatsoever from her likeness.
Right.
Nothing.
She jokes that every single time she looks in the mirror, she's got to pay George Lucas $5, isn't she?
But I think Harrison could do it. But then again, he's busy doing other such wonderful big hits as.
He wants to do an Indy 5, doesn't he?
Nope, can't think of any, Harrison. So go back and do Star. You can't. Other than Indiana Jones, you tell me some big Harrison Ford films. Cowboys and Aliens, maybe. But
that flopped though, didn't it? So
yes.
Not. I mean, I don't see why any of them wouldn't want to do it, except I mean, it would be other than the fact that this may be the last film for a lot of them, and so they will be I mean, Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill, I think this would be great for them. Harrison Ford might disagree. I think
Harrison Ford, I think he looks back on Star Wars as negative. You always see him like rag on it in interviews, as if he wished he hadn't done it.
Yeah, it's like, you know what, Harrison, if you didn't do it, you'd still be being a carpenter, because that's what you were doing when Lucas spotted you.
Yeah.
You'd gone back to doing carpentry.
You know what? Seeing Mark Hamill play Luke in 2011 would be really cool, because I think he still kind of looks like himself, so... I mean...
I'm still trying to get over the general thought of like a grey-haired Wookiee and C-3PO with arthritis.
I've met the guy
Daniels,
that plays Chewbacca. He looks like
Anthony Daniels is a freak of nature. He's still fit into the C-3PO suit all these years later.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, and Luke is, I mean, just think of Yoda. I mean, Luke is in the books. Luke is the Grandmaster. I mean, I don't want to spoil the book too much, but Luke is the Grandmaster. So he spends a lot of time sitting in that Grandmaster chair, and not a lot of time swinging a lightsaber. I mean, there are a few times, like Yoda had to, every once in a while get up and say, hey, the Jedi have failed. I need to step up and show everybody why I'm the Grandmaster. But for the most part, he just sits in the chair and delegates. And so I think he'd be able to do that no problem. Han is very active, but I think that wouldn't be a problem for Harrison Ford to be able to do those roles. The hardest part is Leia is a Jedi, and a very active Jedi. She goes on a lot of missions for Luke and things like that, and so I think that would be the most difficult part to do.
Yeah, but it could be done.
Would you get someone else to play Leia then?
No.
Someone to look like Carrie Fisher.
There's no way.
Can't do it at all.
There's no way Carrie Fisher can play Leia in 2011. There's just no way.
I think she could.
What's she done since Star Wars? Anything?
Don't you remember when they brought Travolta back to do Pulp Fiction? Everybody thought he was completely washed up. It could be another Travolta thing. You take a washed up actor and give him a career again.
Yep.
Mark Hamill still does stuff. He doesn't do the voice for the Batman animated
Joker
series.
Yeah.
Stuart, if I had George Lucas's ear, and I've somewhat touched on this already, I need to see episode 3.5, which would be, like I talked about earlier, a whole movie of Darth Vader hunting down Jedi. That would be it.
That was another rumor for what the TV series might be, is that him hunting down the last of the Jedi that survived Order 66 at the end of the third movie. So that would be cool.
Yeah,
I would watch that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I think we're all Star Wars fans, so this hasn't been...
That would be better than Boba Fett, that.
You could do both.
Yeah.
But I don't think any of us here are actually Star Wars bashers. Hopefully we quite like them. But we have our little issues with the series.
No, regardless of what you hear about these films, I mean, especially the original film, I mean, some of the best films ever released. And you have to watch them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're always going to go down as a classic.
Yeah.
Simon, Blade Runner.
Regardless of if Darth Vader says no or not.
They'll be throwing out classic. You need to go watch Blade Runner, okay? I told you.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Come on.
Blade Runner is up there with Star Wars as a classic film in my opinion.
You know what? I still haven't seen Godfather. Can you believe that?
Simon, you need to hang up in a second and stay up all night.
I know.
And watch Godfather 1 and 2. Don't bother with number 3 unless you're really bored.
That's the second time I've heard that this week, so I'm going to have to get onto that.
You do. That could be your homework. And then when you've watched them, we'll jump back on another podcast and we can talk about them. How's that?
Yeah, all right.
Yeah. Well, if anybody got any shout-outs as we sort of round this up on a Sunday evening in the UK.
Sure, can I plug my Twitter page?
You certainly can. You plug whatever you want.
Yeah, I'm 09 Shan. If you want to give me a follow, I'll talk about films, wrestling, mixed martial arts, anything.
Blade Runner.
So Blade Runner, yeah.
And what about yourself, Bob? Who are you going to say hello to? Let's get you out of the way.
Well, I'm just going to touch on something that was said earlier, going back to the comic book thing, and this one's going to be directed at Simon. You were on about things to kind of pick up on.
Yeah.
One that I can basically say, please read this, and it's basically one that was brought out in the 90s, and it was a series called Transmetropolitan.
Transmetropolitan, yeah.
Yeah, you can pick it up in graphic novel format now. There's about 5 of them. Beg, borrow, steal, but read those. You will love them.
We're not
Are they
stealing.
available on the iPad?
Stuart?
But yeah, Bob's allergic to anything Apple-based. Bob appears on a lot of podcasts that we do, a lot of front page to screen ones, but Bob doesn't own an iPod and doesn't agree with iTunes, so, go figure. He doesn't like. He's got an issue with Steve Jobs.
Yeah, honestly, Stuart, you need to buy him an iPhone. It would change his life.
I might do that.
Running an Android phone.
Just to wind him up.
I feel so
Happy
sorry
to do
for you.
so. I
Well,
refuse to put 15% per key press to the Church of Jobs.
Swear, buy yourself an iPhone. It'll change your life.
This, Bob's wife actually uses a Mac, so slowly creeping into his house.
Yeah.
So does my boss, and I take him to task about being a fanboy.
So yes, so I don't know whether these things will appear on the iPad, but just do a bit of an internet search, and hopefully they will do.
Yeah, have a look up. Just search on Transmetropolitan. You'll find out what I'm on about.
Okay, I'll Google it and see what comes up. All right, thanks. Yeah, I'll check that out.
Shout outs for you, Ralph.
I'd just like to shout out Open Forum Radio and our podcast, Truthfully Geeking, part of the Open Forum Network. And, check us out if you're into gaming and technology. We always talk about some of the latest games, some classics, and always the new technology out there.
I started listening to your show maybe a month or so back, and I'm catching up on some of the back episodes. I'm up to date. Love it. Brilliant.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Excellent.
And Anthony Alex, Mr. Angry Mailman himself.
Yes, sir. I would also like to shout out Open Forum Radio Network. You can go to openforumradio.com and get everybody's feeds like Truthfully Geeking and the Angry Mailman podcast. We just released episode 62, and you can hear us play everybody's favorite game show, Name That Bubba.
Name That Bubba?
Name That Bubba, yeah.
Should we listen to the podcast to get the explanation of what Name That Bubba is? Or
yeah, I'm not going to tell you any more than that.
That's my list sorted out for tomorrow.
Right. So there's your homework, Stuart.
Name That Bubba.
What I've been doing is downloading all the podcasts and listening to them while I'm at work, not doing any work. And you guys, like Truthfully Geeking, Angry Mailman shows and whatnot, and Name That Bubba will be keeping me company tomorrow.
Absolutely.
You'll be keeping him sane.
Yes, most definitely. I'd like to give a shout out to my co-host, Pimpin, Harold, who would have been here, but it's a weekend, so he's working stupid hours. He said he would participate in the Star Wars show. He's not a major Star Wars fan, but he loves to hear the sound of his own voice. So,
sure.
Hi, Harold. Hope you get some sleep tomorrow, and we'll actually be recording a media show tomorrow. I actually finished editing a show tonight, which I recorded last night with Hollywood actress Brooke Lewis. So that was a 1-hour show, and I actually got my partner Annette on her very first podcast ever.
Wow.
So.
Could I also just plug maybe someone out there that might want to start a podcast with me as well?
I was going to say no, just to be funny, but no, of course you can.
All right, yeah. If you're interested in doing a movie podcast, I'm interested in starting up a film podcast. And any suggestions would also be appreciated. Again, just follow me on Twitter at 09shan.
Should I find it rather insulting that you're on my movie podcast asking people if they'd like to do a movie podcast with you?
Yeah, well, I swear to God, it won't be a rip-off of your podcast.
Oh, no, I didn't mind that. It's like, hello, you've got 3 people here who would probably do it. No, I'm just teasing.
Honestly, if I get one going at all 3, I'd love to have all 3 of you on, so.
Brilliant. Nothing like forcing an invite, is there? Woohoo! Well,
I would like to start a movie podcast better than the one you're listening to right now.
So for those 2 people listening to this podcast, if you'd like to be on one that probably has several more listeners, give Simon a shout on 09 Charm. Yeah.
I like it.
So what's everybody's plans for the rest of the day? Me, I am going to go and have a cup of tea and then go to sleep because I'm up in about 9 hours for work. So what's everybody else up to?
I got lots of homework to do, and then I have the Truthfully Geeking podcast to record tonight in about 5 hours.
Wow.
I've got to go. I've got college tomorrow. I'm taking a film course, so.
Nice.
Skive College, watch Godfather, Godfather 2, and Blade Runner.
Right.
If he's doing a film course, he can put it down as coursework.
Sure, it's homework.
That is true.
I'm not sure you can get a passing grade without watching those movies, but
I'd agree with you on that. Yeah.
So would I. What about you, Anthony? What are you up to for the remainder of the day?
In about 15 minutes, I'm leaving to go run sound at our church, and then after that, I will come home and fire up Steam and play Steam games until I'm deliriously tired, and then I'll go to bed.
And fall asleep.
Oh, I like it.
What about you, Bob? Are you going to crash in a few minutes?
I'm probably going to make myself another brew, and I may be online doing some online MMORPGs. Failing that, might go on to World of Tanks and blow things like.
There you go.
iPod shopping, that's what you need to be doing. Sign up for the iTunes thing and download this program.
You know that whack-a-mole game? I think that but like with iPods and iPhones. Big mallet. Great. We've got a seller here. I'm gonna put that together as an Android game.
You're a strange man, Bob. Well, I just want to thank all of you for appearing on this show. It's been delayed a couple of times, so there's obviously been changes to the schedule, which is kind of weird considering we're talking about changes to films and stuff. But just thank you for all managing to jump on. And
so I guess in another few years, you're going to actually kind of release the re-edited version of this with digital remastering and a few different voices.
Yeah,
someone going
to change Simon's voice, but keep his name in there. I'm going to put a few new characters in, and I'm going to change the name of it to episode 112 or something like that. And but obviously, it'll still be made in 2011, so that'll be fine.
And Simon will still get a credit, even though there's another person doing it.
Even though he's not in it as much as he would have been, yes, because he'll be off doing his movie podcast, which is better than ours, apparently. Well, thank you very much, you guys, anyway. And I shall end this show with a very, very famous quote. No. So good night, all.
Good night to one and all.
May the force be with you. Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.